Hello, everyone. It's Allison from CFB Boarded, ready to take you through about a 20 to 25 minute information session on the benefit of yoga in sports and athletes. So let's begin. And now we're going to go into the overview of the webinar. We're going to do a 5-minute introduction, background, and philosophy. We're going to do 15 to 20 minutes of exploring the benefits of yoga, the why and how. Then we're going to do a question and answer period. And then you can go to the next link or part 2 for a physical practice. And at the end of this, we're also going to reach out to give you answers to how to reach out to your base and support. I am a fitness and sports instructor here at CFB Borden for over 8 years. I have a 250-hour registered yoga instructor or teacher. I am registered with the Yoga Alliance, who is recognized nationally or internationally. And then I have a specialty in yin yoga and traditional Chinese medicine. And I have over 2,000 hours of instructional teaching hours logged. And I'm also a certified personal trainer with CSEP. And I've been in the fitness industry and practicing for over 12 years. So let's get into the why yoga for military sports and athletes. By adding yoga to your training program, it helps create a more cohesive mind-body connection. You can manage your performance under high pressure plays and situations much better. You can adapt to situations better, both mentally and physically. You can manage your emotions rather than let them take over. You can manage and be aware of your internal stress and anxieties. In being more aware and attuned to our bodies, we can reduce and prevent injury. Now let's get into more depth of each of these as to the why and how. So we're going to get into the mental and emotional benefits first. So yoga can increase the ability to think clearly under pressure, your reaction, and your playmaking skills. This is done by being able to manage our emotions better. It's done by creating more awareness of what's internally going on, both physically and mentally, so that you can recognize and make that clear decision in what you're doing under the pressure and perform at a higher level. You're going to recognize your emotions and hopefully be able to control them. And what I mean by that is when a call is made and a play is happening, and the call isn't something in your favor, it is now a time to take a step back, pause, and then react versus reacting in the heat of the moment and potentially limiting yourself to the points or losing the ball or the match or whatever sport you play this kind of gets into, as well as that potential for internal self-doubt and hesitation we may have. It also increases the athlete's ability to rise and come back when the team or you as the athlete or the coach is facing adversity, rather than letting that negative self-talk or the situation start to just pile and develop more and more. This is a time where we can really start to recognize and be able to set stuff aside and push and be at the top level of our performance. And then another benefit is by visualization and meditation. And we're going to get into the why and how in a bit. Now let's get into some of the physical benefits that yoga can provide. So it can help in aiding and correcting imbalances caused by your sport-specific training or in daily life. So if we're more at a desk job, and our hip flexors are more tight and we're more rounded. And then we also do triathlons or we run and we're also using those same muscles that are already tight. We can help, better your posture and in your body. And that also goes for pretty much any sport. Let's say you're a golfer, you're always swinging on one side of the body with the club and hitting the ball. Well, you're creating imbalances from your right to left across the cross body. And so we want to help make sure both sides are strong and stay even so that you have a longevity, not only as an athlete, but as a calf member and as a person. We can, with that, also lengthen tight or overused muscular tissue. So potentially scarring from old injuries and issues. We can, that nagging tightness we can get into and really get more release. We can also increase our overall balance. So a lot of sports like the pictures, archery, and shooting require some sort of balance and focus. And you get that with yoga, and you get that neurological connection within the body to become better and more used to it. And it's a skill like all other skills that should be practiced to make sure we stay at our best. Also, some more physical benefits would be to increase your core strength. So, depending on the style of yoga and the practice that you're potentially going to be doing, if we can strengthen our overall core, we can be more powerful through our movements. We can perform better, less likely to get low back injuries. So, strengthening the core is something that is highly beneficial and important that we get into. So, take that into consideration when you're choosing the type and style of yoga. We can also increase the aid and cross body movements in more of a rotational sport like hockey, golf, slow pitch, and swimmers. So by doing some more cross body movements, you can see in the downward dog one arm balancing position or the core strengthening opposing leg and arm movement, and how that could be very beneficial to somebody like a swimmer or a triathlete who also swims. Getting that power on both the right and left side and that slight rotation of the body can really push your sport along and make you a better athlete. And that transcends to most sports, that you're using both the right and left side or a little more of one side than the other. And then being just more physically and mentally aware of your body can reduce and prevent injuries. If you know when your body's sore and tired and you should ease off the gas pedal, so to speak, or if you feel good and you know you can push a little more in your training sessions, whether that's a land, dry land strength training or your sport specific training, being that knowledgeable about your body can truly excel your training, and being smart about it, as you do want longevity. And we are getting back into the situation of sports and competing after a pandemic or even in a pandemic. And training is not always ideal under these circumstances. So be smart. So let's get into the how to implement yoga to your physical practice, or what we would call in yoga is asana, the physical practice. So there are different types of yoga appropriate to your goals and your sports as an athlete. So here are a couple types, and I'm going to explain each. So we have more of our power-based yoga. Your Ashtanga, which is more strength, holding postures like you're kind of in between panes of glass. There is a goal of a little more perfection with holding the poses. Then you have a vinyasa, or a power flow, somebody might call it. And that's when we're moving through in a more fluid state. Potentially holding some of the postures. There should be peaks and levels to the type of yoga that vinyasa can be. And then we have a little more of our slow, focused practicing on gaining more range of motion. So this would be your hatha, which is holding for 3 to 5 seconds or 3 breaths in each posture. Very methodical, very focused. Can be more strength based because you're holding longer. We have yin yoga, which is sitting, supporting your body through different holds for 2 to 5 minutes. And holding those postures for that length of time can really help release the fascial tissue through your body and help you gain more of that quote unquote stretch or a better range of motion. Then you'll have stuff like a yang to yin, which is more of a vinyasa to yin. You'll have 30-40 minutes of each style, normally starting with the movement and ending with more of the holds. And then we have practices like restorative yoga, which is really you're more propped up, you're more cozy. It's more about the mental aspect than it is about the physical. And when you're choosing your style of yoga, take into consideration your sports. So if you're a runner, a triathlete, a person moving with very high endurance and speed and impact, you might want to choose a style of yoga that's the opposite so that you're not overtraining. Whereas when we're choosing a sport or an off season, let's say, you might want to go with more of the power base for the strength so that we can implement it appropriately. And let's talk about where and when to add it in relation to sports and athletes. So ideally, a good prescription to follow on your off or pre-season would be adding it in 1 to 3 days a week and most likely on recovery days. When you're in season, you only want to add it when it's appropriate to the training. Post season, we can add a little more. You can go anywhere between 1 and 4 times a week, depending on the style and what you're trying to achieve. And I highly recommend talking to either your trainer or your coach or your team to make sure that adding it in is appropriate for you and your body. You're going to run into classes and instructors that just don't mesh with how you think, your style, how you approach your sport and your body and your game. And this is a really good way to realize, because it's happened to me a few times. You go to a class and you get nothing out of it. The language the teacher is choosing doesn't suit you, doesn't suit the way you think and you process. So keep that in mind as well. Don't give up if you run into an instructor that's just not for you. So now let's get into how to implement yoga for your mental and emotional benefits and states. So we're going to talk about different styles and types you can approach here. So first we have something like a body scan. A body scan can bring you into the moment and fully present with your body if your mind is racing or you're feeling anxiety. You have the monkey mind that just won't stop or turn off. You start scanning your body normally in a methodical and systematic way, really taking a moment to stay on each part of the body, from even little aspects like your toes to your ankles, or your feet to your ankles to your shins to your knees, and so on, working your way up. Then we get into types of guided meditation, and there's a couple different ways we can do a guided meditation. You can follow along an app and have somebody, or a class and have somebody coach you through it. Where you're sitting maybe more still and more focused. Or we can also do a meditation through movement. The way we approach our sport and our game. So we show up, let's say, to the soccer field. We get out of our car in a certain way. We grab our bags a certain way. we approach the benches or the changing area a certain way. There's a methodical, systematic process or ritual that you do. You always put your shoes and you unpack the same way, you get dressed the same way. And this starts taking the anxiety away because you're more present in this, how you approach and how you pull away when you're starting your sport, or how you get to the floor to begin. And that can also include having music in your ears so you can focus and stay in the moment longer. There are apps we can use, whether it's for guided meditations or breath work, which is very important. And we'll get into in a few points. But most can be free. You shouldn't have to pay for them. There's free access on YouTube with not only fitness and sports instructors with PSP and labeled stuff like yoga for runners or yoga for swimmers, but really you can find any style that should suit you for free. There's visualization. So you can do this out on the field or on the court, depending on your sport. You can do this before, after, but you're in a state of seeing potential, how the game can unfold, how your match can unfold, knowing your opponent and the team you're playing, what their limits are. Okay, if they do this, how will I react? And visualizing not only the win and the W, but visualizing, okay, what could go wrong? How will I feel if I fail or not succeed? And then that gives you the full spectrum of how you could feel. Then there's stuff like breath exercises. If you really start to think about yourself as an athlete, there's a system and breathing to your sport that you might not even think or be aware of. So when I say that, I mean swimmers. Every 4 strokes, 3 strokes, we're breathing. Runners, there's this inhale and then double exhale to keep the breathing and your rhythm of your heart at a certain pace to hold your pace. You think about a tennis player, when they hit the ball, there's this exhale for more power and they make that grunt. A martial artist, there's normally some sort of systematically breathing as you're hitting or punching or moving. And take that into consideration, that if we work on our breathing and proper breathing, and we use our lower belly and our diaphragm, we're going to get potentially 60% more oxygen than versus chest breathing and mouth breathing, which will help our bodies take more in. And the way we can learn breath work can really excel you in your sport as your athlete. We can also journal. So taking a journal in your bag and just writing down, like on your practice or your game, your match, wherever you're doing, what felt good that day about that run, what felt good about that match, where there were struggles. And you shouldn't be spending more than 4 to 5 minutes, but it might help you start to realize where you're at and how you're doing, and why certain games and matches are better than others, or certain runs and training is better than others. And you can really start to narrow down and pinpoint what works for you as an athlete, and that can help transcend you. So you know when you're an off day, why it's an off day. And then also setting your intention. In yoga, we would call this your sankalpa. So setting your intention or your sankalpa can happen a few different ways and times. We can do it in the morning before we even get out of bed. Your intentions should always be extremely clear and concise, no more than 3 to 5 things for that specific day, training event. If it's an actual game or match and competitive, what are your intentions? This is going to help you goal set and start to really hone in on your day and focus in, versus getting scattered or distracted, because that becomes very easy for us as athletes. And then doing these things, we want to make sure that we're layering them with what's appropriate to us as athletes. You never want to choose any of these that's going to be more work, or do them all at once and then it's too much. So we're continuing on with our mental and emotional implementation. So creating a mindfulness and a present state or practice can really benefit you. And what I mean by this is it creates awareness or consciousness for reactions in any given practice or game. When implementing or adding these to your routines, you don't have to do all of them. We highly suggest that you pick one or two things to focus on and add. And when you're ready, you start to layer on, knowing that this isn't going to be easy. And as type A personalities for most sports, and really being focused and vigilant, we can be probably some of the hardest people on ourselves. And we want to make sure that you're not getting stressed out or anxiety by trying to add something new in. We want to make sure that if you fall, you do it again. Being aware of your reactions will help create ownership, knowing when you can step up or back off. Depending on the circumstances, this helps athletes be better leaders or better followers. Knowing when to appropriately challenge a ref or the coaches in plays or games, this will help you become a better leader and add more cohesion to a team and be a better teammate or a better coach. And these are really why you should be adding them in. And that concludes our webinar. Feel free to reach out to myself, Allison Brush at CFB Borden, or reach out to the CAF Sports National Office, and they will be able to put you in contact with the proper fitness coordinator or sports coordinator who can get you in touch with a local yoga instructor at your base. And thank you for joining us.